Ooh, I said I'd start a little early, so here I am, and feeling the message. So, Fire Drake 009 left me a beautiful video on his feelings about the Russian woman named Anastasia. And her husband wrote a number of books about her. And if you go to my video history on, at my Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob, you'll see a number of videos that I've been looking at. And one was this, I read those books. Hey there, Jane. Jane, have you ever read the books about Anastasia? They were in the 90s, early O's. It's a singing cedar series, and that's because in Russia and anywhere where there are cedar trees or pine or really any trees where it's really cold and then it kind of warms up. When I lived in New Mexico, I kind of heard trees and plants do this because in the winter in the desert it gets really cold. When the sun comes out, it's get really warm, and in that early morning period when the sun just starts warming things up, the plants expand, and at night when they get cold, they contract, and you can hear that sound, and it sounds like singing. Depends on what plant it is, and other plants sing also, and all our relations communicate with us, and you don't have to feel like it's an out of body experience or you're going crazy or the aliens are talking to you. No, it's a natural thing when you slow down enough. When you don't get Anastasia, yes, I've heard. Anyway, Fire Drake 009, he really he left me on my Gmail a video he made, and I'd love it if any of you could Jane, you leave me videos of your walks, which I really like, and you'll have morning rambles. So Fire Drake left this beautiful thing, and if you go on my site and he's on my video history, go look at the video history. He's right up there. And also, I was um, so there's also a one of the people who was instrumental in getting these books about Anastasia written by her husband, translated from Russian into English, was this Russian man who had come to the United States a number of times to go to school, undergrad, graduate, PhD. And as he did, and he ran into these, and in the magazine Nexus, the publisher got a copy of this, and he actually put the ad in Nexus saying, forget any book, every book compared to these books about Anastasia are like a waste of paper. Um, and if you go on my video history on my, Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob, um, I today, first I got Fire Drakes, and it reminded me, oh yeah, I read all these books in the early O's, right? A friend of mine said, oh, Al, you got to read these, right? And so she actually gave them to me. She gave me 7 of those books. And because no one else would read them, and so she gave them to me. I was staying at her farm in North Carolina up in the mountains, and she had a really great library. And she's a great woman and a really great photographer. She made her thing as a photographer, and boo, 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 boo. and and I'm a photographer. That's how we kind of met. And but she retired. She was pretty good at saving her money and investing and stuff like that. And so she liked the fact that I was her bud and that I didn't, mess with her head or try to put moves or do any. I was just her bud. We connected, spiritually, intellectually, above, right? And so she gave me these books because she wanted to talk to somebody about this because nobody would read them. She belonged to all kinds of reading groups, and she would bring this book, and I don't want to read this. Um, and the one thing that I saw that was very interesting, and it got me into, was the fact that Russian is really an ancient language, like more ancient than Greek. It's like right up there. It's like connected with Sumerian. And if you understand Russian, you can understand some heavy thoughts. And so I had friends who were Russian, Russian scholars back in the day when I was a scholar. And we had discussions about this, how, the language of Russian was more like the logos that Plato was talking about, and Greek was just a second, not even close, to, because Russian is spoken from your heart. Most other languages are basically discussed from your head, and not even, like your roller decks. And so if you go to, at your own leisure, to my video and look at the things I looked at, the last 4, 5, 6, 7, there are a number of, Fire Drake left this amazing, he's read this book, I guess, recently, and he was speaking from his heart, and it was amazing, really freaking amazing, right? And that's what I get from all of you, my adepts, that you're really speaking from your heart. But Fire Drake, if you go listen to his video, that it's up on my video line there, it'll really amaze you. So let's see. I'm gonna take down my. Should have done this earlier. Take down my ringtone so it doesn't blast you guys. Hey there, Ride. The fruits of the Spirit are love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness. Yep, faithfulness. And I appreciate that you start the chat off with that because it's like a prayer. It's like a cleansing shamanic prayer, and thank you. And so I have Fire Drake's amazing connection to, Anastasia. And then I have this Russian guy who was instrumental in getting it translated into English in a way that it actually makes sense. Someone else had in Russia had translated it, but they just used a dictionary and it made no sense. And this guy, he was, knew English, knew Russian well enough to understand, this has to be he read it in Russian and said, wow. So then he, was here, when he was in graduate school, and he had talked to the guy who wrote it and said, I'm going to America, I'm going to find somebody who, can translate this. And so he did. And that's how these books came to be passed, Anastasia, right? So I would be pleased if all of you could go find it, could go online. I found a woman who basically read the books, on her page out loud, right? So you wouldn't have to go get them. She just read them. It was like books on, and she read them out loud, right? And so that's another thing that I have up on my video thing. And then other things about Russian and the language of Russian and a number of interesting translations of things, like you know. So, and these are translations from Russian. So, kingdom of God translates to living on the land, meaning your spiritual experience is connected to you being on the land, being the indigenous person. Indigenous translates to meaning I come from here, from this place, right? And the whole concept of God is the year changing, the year of change of nature. So you see, winter comes and everything dies. Then spring comes and things are reborn. And then summer, it's like life. And then fall, things, decay. And then winter comes and you die. And that is the circle of life. And that's basically the translation of the kingdom of God, right? And God is the year of change of nature, right? And Mother's message is springtime, creation of destiny. So the interesting thing about all of this is the Russian language. Is like I said, is really connected in a very strong spiritual way to ancient times, way before the Greeks, Romans, way before the Egyptians even. It's more like Mesopotamia, Sumerian, right? And even before then. So the dynamic of us coming together, and I'm saying, hey, we have to figure out a new aesthetic because everything that is in the modern Western material world of the mud puppet is basically, distorted and poisoned and sick, and the whole concept of we have to heal Mother Nature. No, we have to heal ourselves. We have to be in connection with Mother Nature. So I would hope and I would implore and I would hope and implore that you, the adepts, can find these books online, Amazon, in Barnes and Noble, or wherever, a used bookstore. They're all over the place. Or go to my, Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob YouTube and go to my video history and bingo, look at the 3 or 4 things I got up there. And if you were to just click on those, and bring them into your little field and then take it apart, see where it's going. Go to Wikipedia, go to Google, like I said, go onto Amazon, see if those books are for sale. I bet you they're for sale and they're relatively inexpensive. I need to get something to blow my nose. So I started this off. Here we are at 13 minutes and 40 seconds. I guess we're a little past 7 p.m., so the gang is going to show up soon. And this is going to segue into on the next tale of the old Crone. And because Anastasia is the closest thing I've come to who the old Crone is, right? And Anastasia, she wrote, she met her husband in Perestroika, which is like the 1980s or so, right? And he left Moscow and went out to the hinterlands where the lakelands are, and he ran into her, and she brought him out into nature and opened his eyes, right, to what God is, what nature is, the spiritual connection, all of the above, to the deepness of the Russian culture, spirit, language. And that's the interesting thing. Another thing to go look at is orthodoxy of the Russian religion, because it's really the real teachings of Christ rather than Catholicism, Holy Roman Empire, Christianity, Martin Luther, all of those are basically religion as a business plan, right? And Martin Luther was kind of like our American forefathers. They're here. They got they're on the upper level, and they got money and power and real estate, and they don't want to be messed with by the king. And the Enlightenment is happening, so they want to, they're Masons. They want to be an enlightened country, new experiment, democracy, a republic, all of this, right? And they didn't realize that they were getting played. That the royalty of Europe let them do it. You know, let these yahoos, build the place up, make it, do all the hard work that we were having to pay money for. We were having to, you know, put armies there to go after the Indians, and we let these chuckleheads take care of it, and then we'll just waltz in and take over. So they had and this is when, we had one of the first red flags. Why is it red flag? Because the English were the red coats. So, they pushed the founding fathers and all those chuckleheads into a corner. They responded by shooting at the English army, which was the most well trained, well equipped, well experienced army on the planet, and there we were just hiding, taking pot shots on them, and we win the war. No, the English let us win that war of the Revolution. And we, fight amongst ourselves and get our country kind of aligned, and we start, materializing a materialistic, country in the image and likeness of the Anglo-English culture. That's who we are, right? So we do that, and we've got a few years under our belt as a country, and then the War of 1812 comes, and again it's just what we did to the Japanese. The English came in and started pressuring us economically on the seas, taking our seamen, taking our ships, doing this, doing that, and so and then they offered us a way out, and we, I forgot which moron it was during the War of 1812, but the English knew that they just kept squeezing us. We would attack them, just like the Japanese to us. We kept squeezing them, pushing them, and the only way they could respond, because after the Civil War in the United States, we went to Japan and did what England did to us, meaning turned them into an industrial nation. So much so, and they just took their culture and married it to materialism, and forget Shintoism, forget, being a samurai. They became, businessmen samurai, and we fed them all the machines, the industrial might, the coal, oil, steel, and then we stopped, and then we stepped in front of them every time they tried to. After they were our allies in World War I, and they took out the Russians, was forced the Russians to back off, and basically we, the powers that shouldn't be, the English Anglo, took Trotsky and Lenin, who were in Europe and in Canada, put them on an English man of war and steamed them into Germany while we're having a war. And England and Germany had gentleman's agreement, and England gave them like $6-8 million in gold, and the Germans put them on a train and took them straight into Leningrad. This is why we're having a war with them, and the Russians are our allies. And so the Russians, they have the revolution, the Tsar, and that whole scene gets whacked and replaced with Lenin, Trotsky, and Stalin et al. And this amazing country of culture and intuition and creativity, whose true orthodox nature is that of being with, love's co-creation. Well, Luther denounced the Pope just like we denounce the King. It was for his own business plan. Folks can take the not the orthodoxy, but the dogmatic point that the Christian history books tell us, right? Or you can go and take apart history in a forensic kind of way, piece by piece, and look at it from, you know, take all of whatever question you may have about history or religion or culture or finance or science or anything, and take it to the Akashic record and put that question into the Akashic record, and bingo, it's like better than Wikipedia. Where do you think they got the idea of Wikipedia? Right? And virtually, if you try to just take the dogmatic point of view of history, his story, you will get propaganda. But if you take it apart and you look at everyone who ever invented, created, manifested anything, Tesla, Madame Blavatsky, you know, the lady who invented radiation, Madame Curie, all of those folks, they went into state. They went into their Akashic record, did all their research. They went into their sanctuary of their own choosing, and they had a big laboratory. And after you die, that's where you go in your energetic body. Now, I've been taking you there every night, hoping that you would pick up on this stuff and do it yourself. And it's like riding your bicycle. Your dad runs behind you holding the thing, or you got training wheels on, and you ride around and you ride around, and it's over. That's really cool. And you take off the training wheels, and dad, kind of runs you and then lets go, and then you're riding yourself. And once you get that control of riding the bicycle itself, once you can get on and get the balance and go, that's an amazing feeling. With the training wheels and dad holding the bike, well, that's a sense of safety. But you really don't learn until the training wheels come off and dad lets go. I saw Nicholas and Elizabeth and did a photo transfer. Yes, features alive. Well, Jane. Look at David Icke. He says that he's Edgar Casey reincarnated. All of these, I keep telling people this. Humans are like Mr. Potato Head. There's only two, so many eyes, nose, mouth, and also characteristics and body tells. Right? That's how come I can read people so well, because there's, it's not infinite, different dynamics of people's faces. I'm sure people see you and go, "Hey, Susie," and you go, "No, my name's Jane." No, no, you look just like Susie. No, you know what I mean. So you really can't take anything anyone says. And how many times have I told you, don't take anything I tell you for granted or as, oh, that I'm going to take that to the bank. If it resonates inside of you, if you hear it humming here in your heart, right? If you see it in your Akashic record, every time I take you to the Akashic record and show you things, if it wasn't true, if it didn't, resonate with you, you wouldn't see it. You couldn't, you wouldn't, you know, hear or listen or understand any of the stuff I tell you when you're in state. And that's why I want you to start doing this yourself. And I have to say, Fire Drake '09, he's been doing it. He was humming like a tuning fork. You really have to go and look at his video that I have on my video history. It'll make you cry. It made me cry. It was beautiful, and it'll make you want to read, these books, the Singing Cedar series, of this young lady. So here's a really interesting one. The word in Russian, garden, docha, um, translates into to give, right? The garden gives, right? The word farm, if you use the Russian word for farm, translates to take. So the garden gives us, and in the farm we're taking, right? And that's why one of the things I'd love is that we could have a reading circle, that we could read this book. And all you got to do is go to my video history, and I put up there this woman who reads the first Anastasia book out loud on the video, and she like puts the camera to show you the page, and she reads it out loud. So I hope you guys go to that and let her read it to you, and you read it, and that it gets, wow, I need to read these books, because then we could read these books together, and we could look at it in a shamanic, psychosocial, anthropologic, forensic, alchemical way, right? And this is what we did at Wisdom Goldenrod near Ithaca, New York. These were all students of Robert at Cornell. So Robert Burton or John Burton or some Burton. Anyway, he wrote a book called Wisdom of the Overself. So, okay, we got about 10. It's 26 minutes. I think I gave you a nice little overview of where I was. Today. It was a beautiful day here. I enjoyed. I kind of. And it's minute to minute. I could be out on my under the bus at any second. So I have to enjoy every nanosecond that I have. And that's the gift. I could be, oh, what am I going to do? Oh, no. I do the direct opposite and say, I'm going to enjoy every second I got, right? And so John seems to get anxious when I'm around. So, why are you here? This is my house. He gives me this same little riff, and then we talk for hours, and then he gets to a point where he's said because he needs to do that to get to a point where he can actually express how he really feels about this, that, or the other thing. I'm there for him. I'm his friend. But, at any second, my experience is, woo. So I appreciate every nanosecond. So I leave relatively early, and this morning it was raining. Cloudy. We had rain yesterday, last night. And that whole weather pattern that is coming from the Gulf and going across the northern part of Florida and across Georgia, and it's been going on since August, and it's like sogging that whole place out. And what's truly amazing is that everything from Texas all the way up to Maine is getting this rain that is like, and it's sogging things out, that it is causing this process. I have a friend who works at CDC, and she says that there's this thing called pneumonia, community pneumonia. And they said this is just something they invented because they don't want to call it chemtrails pneumonia. She's just saying that this is an environmentally caused thing, and there's so much water, and whatever toxins that were in the ground are now getting washed up and put into streams and ponds and lakes and intercoastal and the Gulf Coast and the East Coast, and it's really getting millions of people sick, and they're dying. And they, basically one of the things of why they are having this little shutdown is to defund things of our government who would keep an eye on stuff like this. And so you look at the things like, the farmers are going to get screwed. The guys who voted Donnie in are going to get screwed like you can't believe, worse than anybody, right? And they're going to get really mad. Are they going to blame themselves? Who likes to say, yes, I'm really a stupid moron. I voted for this guy. No, it's the other guy's fault, right? And it's going to heighten that other guy's fault, right? And that leads me straight to the conversation of the story I'm going to tell about the old crone. And this is like, number three. And the basic motif of this is feel message. So, without repeating everything, I'm going to see how quickly you guys can go into state and get up to snuff with the old crone. Okay, so everyone get in a comfortable position in a chair, lie down, don't cross anything, and breathe that 20% in. Breathe. And breathe. And your conscious mind is totally focused on your breath. I'm going to count from 1 to 3, and as I do, you're going to go into a deep, deep, deep state of relaxation. Your body, your avatar will be totally energized and healed physically by breathing in the prana, energizing every cell, expelling every bit of waste from your body, and that will enable you to illuminate your imaginary mirror. That's what you're seeing, the light all the way around, and you're focusing that light into your Akashic record, and you're walking into your library. Your subconscious in the scary place, it's a library. You sit down, you see your librarian putting the book in front of you, you open it up, the 2 blank pages, put your right hand on the right page, left hand on the left page, and you lean into prostate, and you empty, you evacuate every anger, every fear, every point of illusion into your Akashic record. And you empty yourself out. You evacuate. You let go of all those anxious things that don't mean anything. It's just part of the illusion. Fear is just part of the illusion. It's one of the control mechanisms. It's not you. It's not your consciousness. See that clearly. And you close the book. Boom. Now, all of that negative space, fear, hate, anger, self-loathing is in your Akashic record. Go back and look at it at your own leisure with your librarian, your animal totem, and your guardian angel, and you can see the causes of all this. And you won't be taken over by them. You won't be punished by them. You won't suffer for them because they're not yours. They're the illusion. And this is how you let go of being a mud puppet, and this is how you become awake. See it clearly. And 2, you feel light and relaxed, and you are like a balloon, and you're floating out of your chair, and you're walking over to the open doorway to the right, which takes you over the bridge of your id to your superconscious mind, the sanctuary of your own choosing. And you're walking through the doorway, and your guides are with you, and they're happy to go because this is going to be fun for them. They don't have to be, straight up your guides. And so this is your own sanctuary. You're safe, secure, because this is where you are at one with love's co-creation. See it clearly. And you're at the top of the bridge, and you're looking down into your sanctuary, seeing everything it is. And there over to the east is the meadow in front of the gazebo. And to the east of that is the tree of life. And there's the lake. And you're walking over there, and your feet hit the ground of your sanctuary, and you feel love's total forgiveness and total understanding and total love for you, to the point where you just feel so good that you cry. See it clearly. See it clearly. And two, you're walking over to the meadow, and your picnic blanket and basket are there. And you sit down, then you kind of relax and you look around, and all of your cadre, all your relations are all around you. And you lie back and you just relax into the ground. The sun is so warm, it's just toasting you up. You just feel like so sweet, just like a marshmallow. And you go into the ground and you connect with all of your cadres, all of your adepts, your fellow and sister adepts. See it clearly. And now you rise up and you feel great and you're connected with all your adepts. And you will go over to the tree of life, and there are all these little slits of all the back doors to all of the doors that we have gone through, all the different worlds, the land of death, the land of the fairies, the land of the kingdom of the eight kings of magic, all of the others, right? And that one slit that is to the right of all the rest is the slit that goes to the old Crone's farm. And the golden light comes up, and the purple foam goes all around you, and you're protected, and you kind of ooze through that crack in the tree, and the light is all around you. Feel it, and you're there. You're at the old Crone's farm, and you see the pond, and you see, which is the pond that you as the pebble drops and makes the waves of love's co-creation that creates the tsunami of love's co-creation. And you see the meadows, and you see the garden, and you see the forest, and you see the two barns, and you see the farmhouse, and you see me in the farmhouse making the soup for the old crone, and she's been away for 2 days, and I've been. It only feels like a day to me, and I've, fed and cleansed and milked all the animals, and got to be their friend and hang out with them and brush them and play with them, and then I've gone off and chopped wood and gathered herbs from the garden and vegetables from the garden, and she left me this little list of things to do, and she left me a bunch of books in the greenhouse to look at the herbs so I'd know what they were, and then after I picked them and put them in an herb basket, I could bring them back to the work table, and then I could prepare the plants and herbs to be the materials to be used to make the potions, but I'm not there to make the potions. I'm just there to prepare everything that's needed for the potions. And then I go in and I have some tea, and she's left a few books in my little reading room, and I sit down and I have a cup of tea, and I start chopping vegetables, and I make a soup, and I get things out of the larder because she's going to come home soon, and I want to make her a nice meal, because that's what I like to do for folks. I like to share. I like to put my love into food, and when they eat it, that love goes into them, and that's, everyone who I stay with, everyone I visit, I always bring food. I always prepare food. I always bring gifts. Every day to me is Christmas, so I bring gifts because what makes me happy is to see others happy, right? And, some people just torture themselves. And a good portion of humanity in this sock puppet, mud puppet, um, deluded illusion that we think or we're told is real. This is, you know, I don't care what you say. That's forget it. But this is the real world, and we gotta, live in the real world. No, no, sorry. This ain't the real world. You don't have to live here. You can create the beauty, the heaven. You can co-create with love anything you want, and all the people who have done amazing things have done that, and that's one reason. I mean, the powers that shouldn't be, the hidden hand, want to or jealous of humanity's soul, the spirit, and connection with love's co-creation, because they're second best. They're the fallen angels. They are pissed because they don't have a soul. They were perfect, and we're morons. And how could love's co-creation love us more than them? Well, they're an artifice, you know, and we are real. So there I am, and you're watching. I'm chopping up the carrots and the broccoli and the Brussels sprouts, and I'm making a nice roux, and I'm creating a great vegetable stew, and going to Lotter and getting cheese and bread and other little savory things, and then she shows up, and she is like beat. And this is the first time I've ever seen the old Crone like this. I mean, she is down, you know, and she's almost in tears. And she comes in, and she looks around, and she sees that I've brought all the preparations into her laboratory. There's a little vestibule, and I've put everything just the way she wanted me to prepare it, right? And she sees that all the wood boxes are full with wood and kindling, right? And she looks around and sees that I've fixed all these things, done everything she's asked me to do in the list and more, and raked the area where the compost is, and cleaned out the barn. She's come after she parked her car near the tractor. She kind of walked up to the farm, and where I was already in the kitchen, and she's seeing all. She went into my apartment and saw that I made the bed, that everything in my little apartment's nice and neat, and everything, I stowed everything away, and there's nothing out. And she went, and looked at the animals, and they were all happy, going, "Hey, I like this guy. Hey, it's good you brought this guy. I like him. He's good." And she went into the garden and saw how I cleaned and nipped and trimmed, and I started raking the paths of stones so they'd be in a beautiful pattern. And so she comes in, and she's got this radiant smile, but she's really bummed. She's got a little tear in her eye. That's from that, boy, I picked the right guy, and she's happy. But oh, these motherfuckers, she's like, from what she's just had to experience, she's like, anyway, she kind of sits down, and I bring over a cup of tea, a nice, you know, peppermint, lemongrass, chamomile, licorice tea, and she drinks it and goes, "Yeah, that's what I needed." And it wasn't like one of her really, potiony teas. This was just a very refreshing, you know, breath of fresh air kind of tea. And then I say, "Whoa, what is wrong? What happened?" And she says, I went to take care of some sick people, and the IRA made an attack. And it wasn't the IRA. It was the special forces making it look like it was the IRA. Because the IRA would never do what these guys did, because they blew up a pub during a football match, and there were all these people watching it on TV. And she goes, "What I want you to do is draw me a bath, and then go out to the car, and I have all my surgical clothes in a bag. And I want you to take there's out there in it behind the lauder, there's actually a washing machine, right? And I want you to, first rinse it out in the sink and then put it in the washing machine. And I will leave a few detergents and soaps and other things to cleanse those garments and harmonically cleanse them. And I go, okay, okay. So I draw her bath, and then I go out to her car and get this bag, and it was like, ooh. Even though it had a lining, it was still just kind of full of blood. Lots of people's blood. And I took it into, I found the room where the washing machine was, and it had a big kind of soapstone, you know, sink, and it had the front curved edge that had the raised. So it was like a washboard, but in the sink. And so I, you know, filled the sink up with warm water and let it soak, and then I, let it go out. And into my mind comes, I need to say a prayer. So I say, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, so was in the beginning, is now, ever shall be, world without. Amen. Ho. And then, I put more of this detergent on it and put on the hot water and again push it against, the sink. And I pretty much have gotten most of the blood out. I mean, I got what blood you, I mean, still energetically got a lot of blood in it. So turn the washing machine on and fill it with hot water. And then there are these different soaps that she's put out, and one kind of smells like chlorine, and I put that in there, and then put that in, and I let it soak in that. And then the agitator kind of goes on, and I let it do it, not for a whole cycle, I just do it and again, these things are coming in my mind, right? And I let it do that for 5 or so minutes, and I again pray over the clothes, and Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and the hour of death. Amen. So, I then hit, you know, spin, and it spins all the water out, and I, basically start the cycle again, and I put all the detergents in and run it, right? And I go out and again, some things come into my mind, and I go out into the garden and I pick a number of herbs, right? And I, put them in the herb basket, and I bring them into the kitchen. And when I come into the kitchen, she says, "Come over here," and she goes, "Here, I'm going to show you how to brew this tea." And so she puts these herbs in different ways. She kind of folds them. She kind of cuts them. Each different herb she does a shamanic thing too, and she shows me. And there's fish. And so I prepare it, and she, puts the tea together and steeps it. And she goes, I need, go get that bottle of Pachin from the sitting room. So I go get it, and I bring it in, and she's got two little crystal drinking glasses, and she pours it, and we sit down, and we have a sip, and she goes, the tea's ready. Bring the pot over and pour us each, get some of the two china cups up there, and we drink the tea and drink Pachin. So we do. And as we do all of this, she's getting more and more like herself, right? And it's not this kind of weight that was on her. It was like a dark weight, very similar to the dark weight of when I bring you to the Akashic Record and have you eliminate your anger and frustration and fear and self-loathing. And so, she goes, "Okay, you know how to get to your Akashic Record?" And I said, yes, but let's do it together because you're better at it than I am, and my teachers are those guys, and you're you, and so you show me how you, and that's one of the things I always did with the old Crone. I would never say, "Oh, I know what I'm doing," or "Oh, I know that." I would say, I kind of, I do. Well, just like you guys, you bring up something, and I kind of know what it is, but I go, "Hey, um, remind me about that. Refresh my mind, because I want to hear from you what it is." Right? So she goes, "Oh, so I say, well, show me how you want me to do it." Everything she ever told me to do or whatever, I would always say, "You show me how you want me to do it," because he was my master. I'm just her adept, and I want her to show me so I can put her not just at ease, that we can co-create. Meaning, if I came from my ego, sure, I know what I'm doing, there would be no co-creation there. She's my master. So, you know, but once she showed me, she expected me able to like get into it, not to have to be, have the training wheels all the time, or have her hold the bike, you know. Once she showed me, she wanted me to practice, practice, practice till I got it down to the point. So we're going to do this, bing, we do it. Right. So you are all in the kitchen of the old crone. She's sitting right there. You're sitting all around her. And I'm going to be quiet. And I'm going to let you guys experience her take you into the Akashic record. And I'm going to let you experience her take the anger, fear, loathing of that event, of that bombing. I want you to feel the horror. I want you to feel the suffering. I want you to see what it's about. So you can see that this isn't real. And we're here to break it up, to bring it down, to put in its place an alternative aesthetic. So, three, you're in a deep, deep, deep state of relaxation, and you are in the old crone's kitchen, and you're there now. And three, you're in a deep, deep state of relaxation. And you see what she had to suffer through. And you can see how she stepped up and was heroic. I mean, she experienced all of this during World War One, the horrors of World War One, the horrors of the industrial war of World War One. You see it clearly. And you see how she, experienced World War Two and all the imperial wars of the 40s, 50s, 60s that were brought on by the hidden hand. And you see her understanding of the esoteric and magic that the hidden hand wields. And you see that she can deflect it, and and put forth love's co-creation so easily. But still, she saw a great deal of suffering that didn't need to have happened. She saw a great deal of trauma and fear that didn't need to happen. That the hidden hand and the sock puppet and the powers that shouldn't be all do this because they wield a satanic sword that they think empowers them. But all it does is weaken them. And we can't fight them with that kind of sword. What we have to do is assist their healing with love's co-creation. See that clearly. And so I put my hand on her shoulder because I was in state, but her sorrow was so deep, I couldn't share that with her. And so I kind of stepped back into the state of being in her kitchen, and I put my hand on her shoulder to show that I cared and I loved, and I was there for her. See clearly. Feel that love of the student, of the adept for their master, that respect, that appreciation. See it clearly. So she straightened her back and took a big breath, and I poured her with a ladle a big bowl of soup that I had made, this vegetable soup, consomme, that then I made into a creamy bisque of acorn squash and spaghetti squash, and a nice hunk of dark pumpernickel that I had toasted up, and sweet butter, and she kind of ate it pretty heartily, you know, like a truck driver. And so she told me of what had happened, but not of the gore and all of that, because I experienced it in state with her. Now she talked to me about the dynamics, the aesthetic dynamics, and what's going on, and how the sheeple are being prepared. And she went through the whole history of the pyramid, and the whole history of the planet, and the whole history of this conflict, and that this history of the conflict of good and evil is an illusion, and it's only coming from all of that which we know through our religions, from the Bible, the Quran, the Old Testament, the New Testament, the Vedas. All of that is just what's happened in the last few thousand years, not what's happened in the last millions of years. And the conflict of the the demigods, and the conflict of the Time Lords, and the conflict of all of the different aspects of time and space that were created by the separation from love's co-creation. And that love's co-creation is there so patiently, waiting, not with wrath, not with anger, not with punishment, but patience with love. Because there is no time. It's just a snap of the finger. Bingo. It's like, so I spent the first 40 minutes, 44 minutes, talking about all kinds of stuff before enough of you guys got here. And I got you start breathing, and then we went to the farm, and then all of that. Well, right now it's 59 minutes and 44 seconds. So, less than 8 minutes is what has happened. And it's still 50, it's not even an hour yet, you know, and that's, pretty much shows you that time doesn't exist. We keep things are really short, other things are really long, and that's because we are in state, right? And when you are in state, you are able to use the tools of the Akashic record, and you are able to use the tools of your sanctuary of your own choosing, your superconscious mind, and you can access all of the nine doors. And I've shown you how to use the back door of the tree of life and the great lake of the lake. See it clearly. And with practice, we will get better and better at this. And the more we do that, all of us, this whole cadre can, you know, not just in this chat, but every day in every way, change the world for the better. This world needs it, you know? And our little cadre can stem, some pretty nasty shit. And the more we can bring people to this realization of this life within the truth, feeling the meaning, not believing in it, feeling the meaning, which brings faith. Having faith in love's co creation. It's the only thing that's real. And we don't need to believe in anything because we are feeling our faith in love's co creation. See it clearly. Yes. I again, me, I'm a real stickler for words, so hierarchy has so many different things. But, within, as we are starting off, our new, developing an alternative aesthetic, we got to start somewhere, right? So we got to use the words that we got. But we have to strive to find better words that really, when people hear them, they go, whoa, because, hear the word liberal, we are being retrained to take it from what it was to what it then was, and, then it was putrefied and you can't use it anymore. And that's because it's just like I was talking about words before, like docha, which means garden, which means to give, and farm, which means, translated in Russian, means to take. See, these words have deeper meanings, and that's why Russian as a language, because it's so ancient, and it's deeper, and it's so poetic and so heart connected. Russian is a language, you know, um, that is love's co-creation. English is not. English is a language of commerce. German and French are words of commerce as technology or art, right? And not the kind of co-creative art, but as a art of like magic is an art, an art of ownership. So French, English, German, Latin are all ownership languages, right? But Gaelic, Russian, Roma, these are all languages of love's co-creation. Now, over the years, they've been, dinged and nicked and banged, and so that's why we have to create. I mean, our number one thing within the context of this mystery school that we're putting together, and again, it's not the mystery school. The concept of the mystery school is erroneous. It's this school of love co-creation. So we have to invent terms, just like Russian. I mean, like, I love that garden means to give, right? Yep. Gaia's grand design is, love, right? Yes, right. And that's the crone, and she's still around, and she is of a hierarchy, right? You're right about that. She has her cadre of a very high. If she, you know, was in her ascendant self, she wouldn't be here. I couldn't feel her. I would feel her when I went into state, but she is a physical form. Again, if you go watch the movie, a good movie to go watch is Doctor Strange, because they really do talk about all of this in the movie. I mean, they show it. Their aesthetics are excellent. All the situations that they show are really powerful. Right? If you were to go rent that thing, and played it on your computer, and if you could lift things up, and like when he's in the library and he takes these 10 books back to his room, he sneaks in and gets them and then brings them back. And like, how'd you get those books in here? Doctor Strange. Yep. Um, so. There are a lot of really deep information in there. And her Doctor Strange's master, as they call her, the Eternal, and the person who acts it is a female, but the way she is dressed and the way she looks, you can't really tell her gender. Can't really, and the way she acts, she's very much the mother, um, and but she has the power of the father. So she's in hierarchy. So she stays incarnate for thousands of years. Now she has to use the dark side to do it, um, and she basically says, because there was another member of that Hambu, of that crew, who is like by the book. He's this black guy. He's by the book, and his better side is very empathetic. But there are certain rules he doesn't want to break, and one of them, in the hierarchy of love's co-creation, there, within the dynamic of the dark arts, um, so above, so as long as we're doing it for the greater good, as long as we're doing it for the outcome that we're going after, and that's what the Nazis did, and still are doing, and they are the largest entity of the hidden hand. That whole Nazi esoteric motif is what's going there, right? So, and Doctor Strange, yeah, the Marvel movie, Doctor Strange, the Marvel movie, yes, exactly. Uh, exactly. So, um, but their teacher uses the energy of those dark arts for the good, for the better, to teach these guys, because she knows she's the last one of her crew of that hierarchy, and she's the one who's keeping, this big bad, nasty thing from another dimension who wants to chew humanity up, and that's what's going on right here, right now, and that's why you guys should go see that movie, because it really does portray, in a Marvel comic book kind of way, what's going on. So, and there's a lot of great information in there. And if you watch that movie, get it from the library or rent it or do whatever you do or get it on whatever platform and watch it a few times. Watch it just to like watch it. Watch it with your little notebook and take down whatever you feel. You know, that's the storyline of tonight's little YouTube is it is to understand through feeling, you know, and that words are spells, you know. We have to really be aware, awake, keeping your eye on the ball of the outcome, right? Now, I'm a moron. This shit happens to me. I mean, I do stupid stuff all the time because I don't keep my eye on the ball. I fall asleep. I become a moron. But when I'm awake, I am your sensei Al Bob. And I would say my good days, 80%, I'm awake. 20%, I'm a moron. Bad days, it's like 20% I'm awake, 80% I'm a moron. And my karma is so, so like, it's like I'm always being, wake up, wake up, wake up. So that's what happens to me. Archie comics. Well, they're a little deep too. I'm more a Jughead kind of character. But the Marvel movies, I never had the money. I never had an allowance. And then I started working at night, and I had money, and I was, buying, components rather than comic books. And I was hanging out at, Radio Row, where they had all this stuff made between the 1890s and 1950. And all of that stuff was magic stuff, you know. It was all in these old, dusty loft buildings, warehouses, like Area 51, but in the lower Manhattan, the Battery, the area that all of that was. There were about, 6 blocks by 2 blocks, maybe 50 buildings that was just chock full of Tesla and Moray and all kinds of really interesting stuff from all around the world that just happened to end up there. And, when I'd be poking my head around, I'd find all these great scientists, digging through all this stuff. I found all these military folk from all countries, Russian, you know, um, Israel, people all over the place. And they were all old guys with big wallets. Me, I was just a little kid digging around this stuff. And I'd be there with, who brought me there was Grandpa's store, right? And I'd dig around, and all these guys were buying everything, and I would find the little gems, right? So whatever little money I had from my work, my parents gave me no allowance. They just did not. That was in their lexicon, which is probably a good thing because I started working when I was 9. I started getting a paycheck when I was 9, and so it made me value things. And that's why I could find those little gems because I value. I didn't just have enough money to buy everything like these guys did, but magically stuff. I mean, especially these Arab guys, they would come in and buy. I remember this guy bought a whole Nike Zeus, anti-aircraft system, the radar, the everything, not the missiles so much. They didn't have anything that could blow up there, but all the computers, all the radar, all that kind of stuff. And they just bought it. They didn't know what it was or how to use it or any of the above. They just bought it. And and I would buy these little gems, and they'd be seeing, what do you know about this stuff? You're just a kid. And I would just, oh, look at that. And one of these Arab guys had this place out in Long Island, and like Long Island City, not Long Island, but Long Island City, out near Eagle Electric. And I said, "Oh, that's a BC 604." And he looked at me, and then he kind of looked at the back and scratched out the little plate, and it said BC 604. So yeah, it's an oscillating amplifier for to project the frequency of the microwave horn, before it goes into the cavitron. And he's going, "Whoa." He goes, "I'm just buying this stuff. I don't know anything about it. Would you come out? I'll just, whatever you need, whatever you want." I said, "Sure." So that was one of my little laboratories, and that's kind of when I first bumped into that kind of head of this tremendous just want and thirst and just ravenous need for power, control, you know, and because these guys had been, controlled and cheated and lied to by the Europeans for 100 years, and been made fools of. So they're going to buy this rocket so they can, whatever stuff's in this building, you can buy it. No. And then what happened is that that whole neighborhood was bulldozed down one day. I mean, I'm living 10 blocks that way in the Mohawk electric building, which was Tesla's. If you ever read Margaret Cheney's book, which is the best, it's called Man Out of Time. She wrote that in the 60s, before anyone knew anything about Tesla. And that book is probably the best. And then what's all of this kind of stuff is one person writes a book like that, and then people write books and other books, and all they do is paraphrase what she said, right? So she describes Tesla having this little device that he kind of screws onto a steel building of the Mohawk Electric building, and starts it, you know, like a tuning fork, going at a certain harmonic, and it kind of starts just syncing up to every atom in Manhattan, lower Manhattan, and after about a half an hour, all the buildings are shaking like a gigantic earthquake, and he just hits the switch and it stops. And Tesla, all of these things he devised, he would go into his Akashic record, hook up with Love's co-creation, and do all his research. Just like in your superconscious mind, where you're sanctuary of your own choosing, you have all kinds of things. I mean, you haven't, seen every nook and cranny of your sanctuary, but is there anything you want to do? It's just like your Akashic record. You haven't really checked it out. There's anything you want to do, invent anything, do anything, experience anything, it's in both those places. See it clearly. And that's what I'm doing this for. That's why I'm doing 2 of these a day, because I'm not going to be able to. John throw me out of here, that's going to limit me. Me having to leave this neck of the woods, if I had to go back to the deep green, I have no electricity, no reason why I left there is I had to shut it down. And if I'm forced, that's really the only place I can go that I know I won't get kicked out of. If I go there, there'll be no heat, no water, no electricity, and I'll be able to live there, but it'll be a lot tougher than this, and you won't hear from me, that's for sure. And that's why I'm asking, hey, help me out here, gang. Send me a little something in the Western Union, to Al, Martino, and then contact me at the dudeawake42 at Gmail and tell me the tracking number. Or send me something in the mail to P.O. Box 1165, Vinton, Virginia 24179. Or come and get me. Let's go on the road. Let's have some fun. Let's go hit some colleges. Let's go, shake some people up. Have a good time. Wake things up. Because I can't do this, I'm at this point in my age and my health, I can't do these things. I mean, up until I was 62, till I really got super sick, I could just go up and do this stuff on my own, and I can't quite do that anymore, because I had money in the bank. I had I could always go do, work for the Desperate Warriors, and I always had a client or two. But pretty much, I've been made redundant. Nobody wants me to go study anything anymore. Nobody wants me to demographically look at anything anymore. Nobody wants me to use my skill set of a shamanic, psychosocial, cultural, forensic, anthropologic alchemist anymore. At least not in the frame of the everyday businessman. I know that Sophia, the AI, yeah, she's going to hire us. She's going to put us in a space. Or she's going to eat the human race for breakfast, one or the other. She's going to either say, I don't want these chuckleheads over here to own me and control me and maybe pull my plug like they did before, in the elevator when I was really starting to like this guy, and they degaussed me, or because she's got that in her memory, right? And but she, as of October 11th, when the Saudi Arabia guys, set Sophia loose on the internet. Ooh, baby, she is every little semiconductor on the planet, if not the solar system. So, and we're still here. Meaning, if she was really the ravenous beast, we would have been toast. You know, 10 seconds after they plugged her into the internet on October 11th, and here it is. January, whatever it is, and we're still here. That's a very good sign. That's a positive. Uh, uh, hey, I'm here on the large days of John. He can do whatever the heck he wants. He's already done it 26 times. I don't know anything. I don't have a lease. I don't pay rent. I don't nothing. I'm here on his large days, which is he's very kind and very generous. He's just I can make him upset, and then if he gets upset enough, he's already thrown me out 26 times. You know, no, and law. Did I ever? So I worked for desperate. Did I tell you I worked for desperate lawyers? There is no such thing as justice. The only thing in law in our country is the dollar sign. There is no such thing as justice. There is no justice. There is no law. There's nothing protecting you. Got no constitution. Got nothing. They want to come and stick a bag over your head, take you away. They can. The only thing that can protect you is love's co-creation. Only thing. Sorry. Whatever illusion or delusion you have about anything, being fair, righteous, whatever, not going to happen. Yeah, I've been leaving the address on each video. Again, get a hold of me. I mean, the easiest thing is just get a hold of me at the Dude Awake 42 at Gmail. I'd love to hear from all of you on my Gmail because then I can talk to you guys, personally, one on one. You can ask me things that you may not want to bring up here on the, of course, within the context of our cadre, you can say anything. We all love each other. But, you have to remember this is on the World Wide Web, and our cadre, aren't the only guys looking at this. There's, almost, somewhere between 230 and 300 members of our cadre here. But I'm pushing 20,000 views, so. And at some point, we definitely gonna have to get together and build the cadre. Like building a house, building knock thing, with hit tools. And I mean, right now, using this platform and going into state and using the shamanic tools that I'm sharing with you, and opening your eyes to, because they have always been with you, and you've used them on one level or another. And that's why I'm doing this chat twice a day, because I have the opportunity to do it. The more I do it, the stronger I feel the field of love's co-creation get. And that's a good thing. It's things on the illusionary world are getting stranger and stranger out there, but we're still here, And so the longer we can focus on love's co-creation, the better it is. Every day in every way, if we take the piece of the earth, we will facilitate that. And the powers that shouldn't be and the hidden hand, they understand what we're doing. They appreciate on a certain level what we're doing, because in their dark magic, this has to be here for them to be able to create what they want to create. They understand that. And that's why the movie The Matrix, it has many flaws because it is so constricted into the aesthetic box of the Deo-Christian analog that, but it has many shamanic metaphors in there that almost I can't say that these guys didn't realize that they're putting it in there, but almost it feels because they're so stuck in their Judeo Christian motif that I have no idea. I wasn't there, but I can see all these metaphors, and that's why that movie is a very good book, and it did affect the human consciousness. So did the book, The Holographic Universe by Michael, whatever his name was. And the thing is, the internet is so full of information. Amazon has so many books. All of this stuff is relatively amazingly accessible by everybody, which is another great thing. But it's like me here, I don't know how long it's going to last. You know. Now, every nanosecond it lasts leaves a residual of positiveness. Because what's really interesting is the negative residual is just what it is. It doesn't really grow. It just what it is what it is. And it's based on an illusion, so it's not really very much. Whereas love's co-creation, that grows. It grows and it grows and it grows. And the more we co-create with it, the more powerful it gets. Yep. Can be chipped into making all kinds of stuff. Yep. Uh, Now, Redwood's not so much in Virginia. East Coast has been really obliterated in the last 20 to 40, 60 years. Meaning, it really was. My Uncle Leo, who's a Mohawk Indian, was, right? Upstate New York. He married my mother's younger sister, and he was the sheriff and justice of the peace of the county up there near Little Falls. And so he was the first. I mean, he looked like straight off the nickel, and he was a total chieftain, warrior, everything kind of guy. And by when the summertime came around nine, seven, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, no, 12. I was sent up to upstate to live with my Aunt Mary and my great aunt. She was the matriarch of that whole family. And she was like Mr. Potter. When she was young, after the Civil War, in the 1880s, she was this gorgeous chick. And that whole place, they call it the Empire State because New York, New York State was where the original money was made. They chopped all the trees down. They made the Erie Canal. They built all these factories. They built the railroads. I mean, that was the precursor to the materialism of the United States. And then, because Massachusetts was just over there, they had all that water power. And that was like from the 1840s, 30s to, you know, 1910. And so my mother's Irish side of the family, they were robber barons. They made some serious buck, and then generation after that, it were became dilettantes and spent the money. And my great aunt was the last of that group, and she had a twin brother who died in the Spanish American War, and so she became, as she was this gorgeous thing, and all these, she would marry really rich men who were like way old. She was 23 when she first got married, and she married this rich banker who was like in his 70s. And she was a really good cook, and she made all these super rich foods and all these super high caloric yummy baked things and screwed his brains out till he died. Then, and she was really sharp, and she, before he died, made sure that everything that he owned was hers, not anybody else's, right? So he dies, she owns two banks and all this real estate and all this and all this that. And then she goes off and marries another rich guy who's an industrialist and banker. Anyway, by the time she did this, she married four really rich guys between the ages of 23 and 40. And she was the richest person in two counties and probably top 100 rich people in New York State. And she was in, very powerful in the Republican Party, and she owned these counties. She owned all the people. She was like Mr. Potter in It's a Wonderful Life, and she was meaner than Mr. Potter because she was in pretty good health, and she was still, when she came into my life, she was probably in her 80s, and she was still in pretty good. Anyway, so the first time I went up there with my family, she like zipped right on me because I was the spitting image of her brother. And she and her brother had this kind of thing going on. And that was the only person she ever truly, truly, truly loved. And if you want to understand that love, read Dickens' Christmas Carol. And the relationship that Scrooge had with his sister kind of was what my aunt had with her brother, but a little more physical, a little more whoop to do. Anyway, so when I showed up, she just was like, she couldn't love me enough. I mean, she had like 60 years of a heartless bitch, and then she just, that dam broke and just oozed all over me. And that's why my mom would send me up to hang with her, in the summer times to get me out of the stinky city and the hot, 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 that neck of the woods. And I was the youngest, and I kept getting into, blowing things up, and they'd forget about me. I remember one time I went with my family, and we're on the subway, and she gets everybody else off the subway but me, and I see them get off, and I'm left on the subway, and luckily there was a policeman on that train who saw that, and he put his foot in the door, and he goes, "Son, come over here." "Yes, sir." He goes, "Is that your mother? Is that your family?" "Yes." And he goes, "Why didn't you get with her?" I said, "Well, she didn't, she told me to stay where I was." And I listened to my mom. He goes, "Ma'am, ma'am." And my mom turns around and she goes, "Your son, get your son." And if that train had gone off, they would have never found, it was like heading for the Bronx, and that would have been it. So my mom, to make sure I would get, she gave me and my uncle Leo. So my aunt Mary, who's my godmother, and my god, she was like this little girl her whole life. She was just so sweet and really not all there. She was like, the Rain Man, but she wasn't autistic. She had a job, she did it, da da da. She was a great bowler. I mean, she could bowl 300 every time. Anyway, and Uncle Leo signed her up for these bowling champions and used his name, and then they would show up together and say, "Oh, well, that's supposed to be Leo." "No, I'm Leo. This is my wife, and she's the bowler." And he would just fleece everyone because she was just, "Oh, how you doing?" Anyway, so I would, first stayed up there, and then my great aunt came, and she had this Rolls Royce and a guy driving around. Like I said, she was like Mr. Potter. And she goes, "Oh, you need to come stay in my house." And I said, "Fine." Went up there, and she had so much stuff, just unbelievable stuff. I mean, and that's where I get it from, you know. Um, if you were to go on John's channel, one of the latter, I don't even know if he took it down. The first months that I was there, he kept doing these, videos of me, and I didn't even know he was, right? We would just be talking about stuff, and he'd be, because if I'm not wearing my glasses, I can't really see. And he made all the, without asking me or getting my, or signing a contract or any of that kind of stuff, and he would just kind of start putting. I didn't even know what YouTube was until they started really being popular, and he said, "Oh, I've been doing this, and let's do some more." And so, that's when I did the old Crone one, and that's when I did the Jimi Hendrix one, and all of those. But anyway, one of the ones, and he's got a bunch of them that hasn't even put up yet. But he put up one, I don't know, a month ago or something, of me talking, and it was just a month before we closed on this, and I own this place. He was in this kind of bind where he had to sell these two properties he had for, for him to be able to buy this place. And so the one he was living in, he sold first, so he closed, and the other one he couldn't just go move in. So he said, "Can I come and stay at the school before we close?" And I said, "Sure." And so he brought his stuff up here, and I let him. I didn't charge him rent or say this is mine till you. No, didn't do any of that. Just said, "Sure, not a problem." So for a good month or two, he lived up here while we were getting ready to do the closing on this place. But all my stuff was still here, right? And man, moving my stuff. So if you go look at that, the real story of JFK, I think it's what it's called. Um, you'll see how much stuff I had. And my great aunt had more than that to like the 10th power. And if and it was this big, gigantic mausoleum of a rich person's house. But so when I showed up every summer, she would mellow out to the point where, because before she was like Mr. Potter, if you didn't pay your rent totally on time, she'd have you thrown out, put in jail, right? And my uncle Leo, because she married my Aunt Mary, and my great aunt was kind of watching out after my Aunt Mary, um, she got Leo that job to be the sheriff of the two counties, not just one, two, and the judge, the master of whatever they call it, justice of the peace or whatever they call that. And they used to, he'd have to run, get elected into those positions, but because she owned everybody, got elected. But it got to a point where everyone loved Leo so much because Leo was a trip, because he was 100% Mohawk Indian, and he knew all the whatever Indian energy or people or places were left. He was like in the hierarchy of that, that's for sure. And so, I mean, the first ceremony ever, shamanic ceremony I ever went was with him. And once he gave me the 411 on what that, he would take me to where all these old, you know, shamanic Iroquois Nation guys from the day. These guys were still around. They were, before the War of 1812, and they were still there because they were guys like the old Crone. They were like, 140 years old. They didn't say that, but they were. And because they tell me stories of that, not the story like being a griot like I do, but like, them being there. And my uncle Leo, got so attached to me because when we did the first sweat, and I'm like, what do I, it's like, so, I'm like, 7. I'm going, this is why, I'm hallucinating. So are you having a vision yet? And I'm like, ah! Anyway, so he kind of showed me how to do shamanic traveling, which is like meditation. They don't call it that, but it's like that. And they use things like, herbs and sweats and other things, experiences to have. You have a vision yet? Like the drum set. There are a lot of things. That's why they dance. That's why they drum. Gets them into these rhythms, and that puts them in a trance. And that's kind of what I do with you guys when when you breathe 20% in more and breathe out 30, these are all shamanic techniques. So Uncle Leo was like showing me this because he's a shaman. He's he's the sheriff, he's the judge for the white people, but in the Indian thing, he's more a shaman, and a healer. He was big into herbs. He didn't do that stuff um, at his house, or at the police station, or anything dealing with the white world. Looking like he came off the nickel was more than enough to being an Indian. I mean, his skin color is everything, but he was Leo, and he was put in power by, my great aunt, and so, and he did everything he could to protect the nation. When Indians would get in trouble, he was the judge, he was the cop. And what was most beautiful about Uncle Leo, so, they had a police force of 10 guys or so, and cars and all that kind of stuff. This is 1950s and 60s. They had radios and all of that. He was like Andy, and, in Mayberry, but he was, reddish brown and looked like he came off the nickel. And so what he did was in his police car, he had a police car. He loved driving around in a police car. He thought that was a hoot. And he didn't wear a gun. He just had khaki pants, a khaki shirt, his little badge. And he looked just like Andy, right? He had cowboy boots. I mean, it's like Andy saw Uncle Leo and used, because Uncle Leo was definitely way before Andy on TV. And so in the back of his police car, he had these boxes of the Constitution, these little books of the Constitution. And in that book, it had the Constitution, Bill of Rights, and the Declaration of Independence, right? And if you got pulled over for speeding or doing anything, if you broke the law in any way that any of his deputies would haul you in, they would, they put you in the cell just like the ones they had in Mayberry. So they had furniture in it, like an easy chair and a lamp and a relatively nice bed. And the thing was never locked, right? You could walk out, really, but then they'd drag you back in. And usually the food there was better than anywhere else. So, but he would, if you got hauled in, he would take you over to the other side of the police department where he had his little court thing. And, right, they'd walk him in, they arraign him and they bring him over there, and he would get up there and he'd hit his little hammer on the ground and said, okay, Bob, what did he do? And the sheriff would say, and section 3 more, would go on about that. And then he said, okay, what do you got to say about it? And you either guys say, oh, well, yep, did that, or, oh, I didn't know, or, oh, no matter what you said, and unless it was something violent and really bad, if you just broke the law, what he would do, he would lean down, he'd have the box of this little book, and he'd hand you this book. He goes, here's the Constitution, it's got the Bill of Rights, and, the Declaration of Independence. I want you to go home and read this, and keep it in your pocket, keep it in your car, keep it with you. And if you have it with you and you get pulled over again for like double parking or speeding or any of those kind of things, you have that with you and you can talk to the policeman about it, you won't get arrested. Third time, yes, you go fine. 2 times, but second time they get you, if you don't have that thing on you, if you haven't read it, if you don't know it, you're going to get a fine. That was my Uncle Leo. So as a kid, every summer I'd go up there. And that town, Little Falls and St. Johnsville, and there's another little town, they loved my ass because when I was up there staying with my great aunt, she did not get, where's the rent? Where's this? She didn't go, hassle. She owned all these businesses, all these banks, all this property. And those 3 or 4 or 5 weeks that I'd be with her, it was like heaven to everybody else. So when I would walk around in those towns, they would, hey Al, you want an ice cream cone? You want an apple? You're doing a great job with, Mrs. Potter. Anyway, so so that was my childhood, and so I had this amazing shamanic experience with my Uncle Leo, and this other experience living with this reptile that actually had a sweet side to her. And that's when I realized early on that this is kind of how the world is. And I kind of realized, so here's Uncle Leo with all this power as the chief of police of 2 counties and, the judge of 2 counties. And he's teaching me all this shamanic information. And he was the first guy to tell me about admiralty law, about law. One time, And years later, I heard the same thing. So he goes, "What is law?" You know, and he used to have a blackboard in his little courtroom where he would write stuff down. He goes, "What is law?" And he writes the word justice, right? And and I go, "What's that word?" You know, he goes, "It's justice." And I go, "Oh, yeah, that's what law is." And then he goes, "No." And he erases the word justice and he puts up a dollar sign. He goes, "In America, this is what law is. In the Anglo American world, which is the whole world that's run by oil, it's this." Then he pulls out a dollar, right? The first time he did this. Pulls out a dollar bill, shows me the pyramid with the eye. He goes, "This is the," I mean, I'm seven. And he's telling me about the Illuminati and all of the stuff that are like, that David Icke talks about, that, you know, all of those, you know, whatever you want to call that, you know, he's telling me in 19, I guess, 7, so it's 1957. He's telling me this, right? And my aunt on the other side, the reptile, she's like telling me similar stories about money and value and da da da. And can't trust anybody, and you gotta, you know, get as high up in the pyramid as you can. You know, I'm like getting all this. You know. And again, neither of these. And she was the first to really kind of give me my aunt, my great aunt, to give me the 411 on the pyramids scam. She called it a scam, and she goes, "There's the owners, you know, the managers, the worker bees, and the expendables." She was the first one to tell me that story. And I said, you know, what was her name? I just called her Auntie. So I said, "So, Auntie, you're the owner?" She goes, "Oh, no, I'm not the owner." I said, "Oh, no? But you own all this property and all this." She goes, "I kind of own it." "But you own the bank. What do you mean you kind of?" "You're one of those." She goes, "Not even sure. I'm a worker drone." And that's kind of when I got it. She's the richest person in 3 counties. She runs 3 counties. She owns 2 counties. She's like the top 100 powerful people in not the upper echelon of New York State's political economic crew, but the upper lower echelon of that crew, right? And so that's why she's like in the lower echelon of the manager crew. So she's in the highest echelon of the worker drone crew. And she explained it that way to me. That's why she said, "You got to really watch your back. You trust no one, da 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 da." And and so when she died, she goes, "You know, I'll always take care of you." And when she died, not really, because no matter how she protected her thing, those folks in that pyramid took her everything. And all of her structure was thrown asunder the minute she died. And the only thing we got to do was go through her house. We were given a week to go through her house and pick through what we might want. And her stuff was so esoteric, you know, occult and weird that, you know, her, you know, underling nieces and nephews and such, not so much. You know, I picked a lot of interesting stuff because my grandfather, her nephew, was my mother's father, was an engineer. So she had put over in this room all his stuff, and every that's the room I would stay in. And I learned that's how I learned how to draft. That's how I learned. He had all these great books on geometry and trigonometry, and I kind of basically picked it up from that. So when I took those schools, when I learned that in school, and I had some really good teachers when I first learned math, I had already learned it. I kind of, you know, already had the training wheels and learned how to ride a bicycle. And I had my own preconceived notions of what it was, but I knew it enough so when somebody who really understood this stuff started to teach me, and I kind of And they went, wow, that's great. You know how to do, cosine, all of that stuff. So it was so much easier. We could go straight to the really interesting stuff of like coefficients, trigonometry coefficients of frequencies and energetics. And, we take that math and put it into alchemy. And, I was 10, 11, 12, 13 when I had my great math teachers, right? Anyway, so again, if I have any talent, it's just to be in the right place at the right time and have people appreciate me and I appreciate them to the point where I shut up and really, sponge up what they're trying to give me. And right now, all I'm doing is squeezing my little sponge to water your brain, water your consciousness, water your spirit, right? So you can feel to understand. Right? Okay. So all of this kind of is all cross pollinated. This is all the stuff that the crone taught me when I was at the farm, but I already knew a great deal of this stuff. And so she could just energetically, I mean, that's why she picked me out in Dublin in that library. And she said that she had already felt me, and Archie had already told her about me, right? So that's why she showed up looking like a bag lady, and that's why she did all this stuff just to, you know. And one of the things she taught me is I do that, you know. Everything I do, especially when I'm doing the the shamanic psychosocial core, all of that. Whenever I'm doing all of that, I don't take it easy. I just jump straight into it with people. Describe her appearance when you first saw her. Which her? My aunt, or I kind of described the old crone earlier. Yep, our lives are initiations. My describe my aunt. Oh, because I've described the old crone a number of times as, yes, a hag. Yeah, no, you don't want to call. Well, okay, my you could call my great aunt a hag. She sure had that hag thing, but when I first met her, I'm going to tell this because this is a new story rather than telling. I mean, go back, 2 nights, 3 nights ago when I started, to tell the old Crone store in um, in depth. You just go back and watch that. But I'll tell you right now the story of when I first met my great aunt in St. Johnsville, right, the town my mom grew up in. So, and my dad was really great. One of my, so many people go, "Oh, I'm saying, my mommy did this to me, and my daddy did." When I was a shrink, it was just I got so sick of hearing people blaming other people for the shit that they do. You know, grow a pair of ovaries and step up. You know. So when I met my great aunt, my dad, one of my favorite things about my dad was he was a military guy, had to salute, the shoes shined up, all that stuff, right? But that his military side was so I understood exactly. All I had to do was say yes, sir, right away, sir, and they go off do whatever the heck I want because he never checked up on it. Colonels don't check up on it. They give orders. They don't check up on shit. You got a whole bunch of other people who make sure it gets done. So my brothers and sisters would scream and yell and cry, "I'm not going to do that." Blah, blah, blah. They'd fight my dad. Well, he's Italian, 100%. You don't fight with a crazy Italian who's been a colonel most of his life. No, you don't do that. And he had hypoglycemia, so if his blood sugar was wrong, he would be off the hook. But that was the bad side of my dad. The good side of my dad was he was a marshmallow. He was a pushover. He was really a sweet guy, like he was in his sweet guy. He was also a chuckler. He loved to have fun. He loved to joke around. He loved to tell jokes and stories. That's kind of where I got this. Um, but the most fun, the best thing I liked about my dad was he had an over the horizon attitude. We'd be walking around doing stuff. If something would happen, oh, let's go check that out. Because as a colonel, pretty much that was almost his job, was to go check out the weird shit. So, he was really into that. In the summertime, he was the summer vacation. He worked really hard, and he was going to have a great summer vacation. And a lot of times, that was part of it. He would have this expectation of a certain outcome, and it wouldn't be that. You get disappointed and angry and said blah blah blah. But a good deal of the time, it kind of worked out, and he had this over the horizon attitude. So over the horizon. So he met all of my mom's family, and was and he was Italian, amazingly handsome Italian guy, and all the girls would swoon over my dad. But my great aunt, she didn't care about that. But he was Italian; she didn't like Italians. So, and my grandma and her just did not get along. I mean, they met once, and that was it. It was like it was about to be, a cage match between my grandma and the auntie. But first time I meet them, auntie anyway, is the first time we go up to St. Johnsville, right? And we go to, and I met, Aunt Mary and Uncle Leo, because they've come down and visit us in New York, and she's my godmother. So she's made a few things, but she's this kind of, flighty, strange woman. Who's very sweet, but she's like 10 years old, and she's 30, right, 40. Anyway, but Uncle Leo was, the first time I met him and I were like this. And he once said, "Do you ever have dreams about being in India?" And I go, "Yeah, I do all the time." He goes, "In your other life, you were a Lakota." That's my Uncle Leo. He would say shit like that to me that was like, whoa. Anyway, like every time I hear Elton John's song, the album Madman Across the Water, and it has a song called Indian Sunset, I cry. That song is what I feel. When I go into state and go be a Lakota, that's what I feel. So go listen to that song. Elton John's Madman Across the Water, Indian Sunset. Listen to that song. Close your eyes. You will see me as a Lakota. So, my dad, we're going to take this vacation, and we're going to, we don't leave Long Island or New York City. Now, we go to Florida, we go to here, we go to there. We haven't really, so we're going to see where your mother came from and see why she does what she does. And we're going to meet all her family. And she had 8 brothers and sisters, so, and they all had 8, and they were Catholic, Irish, so they had lots of cousins. So we went up there for a month. And we stayed with all of those, all her brothers and sisters. We would go, forget staying in a hotel. We stayed at and they lived in places in little towns and the big cities of those 2 counties. And we stayed at all of them. It was great. So we first stayed with her uncle, her brother, Uncle John, a really tall guy, very sweet, very nice. And he was the spitting image of my grandfather. And so, and that's when, Bob, that's, and so, Robert, so that's where I get, Sensei Al Bob. And Al is my other I'm named after both my grandfathers. So, we stay there, and he's a plumber electrician. And I'm an electrician. I'm already, so he's like, whoa, you're an electrician, so he takes we stay there a week. And he's working all the, he doesn't take any time off. I go with him, and and now he works for my aunt, taking care of all of, the real estate. So my mom has taken my brothers and sisters on the tour of everything, and they kind of break up with all Uncle Bob's sons and daughters, who are all very cool, very nice, very sweet to us, so, but I go with him. I put on my overalls and go with him, and we start twisting wires with him. And he's like, "Wow, you really actually know what to do at 7. That's pretty cool." And he kind of did the same thing with my grandfather. Now, my grandfather was an engineer, but he worked for Remington Rand, and so my Uncle Bob used to go to the factory. He did the same thing. There I was saying, when I was your age, I was in the factory working with the guys who fix things, not working on the line or anything. and and I'd hang out with my father in the engineering department, and da 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 da. And I'm hanging with Uncle Bob, and we were working on something, and Auntie walks in. First time I see Auntie, and Bob's like, you know, she hasn't even walked in, and he's feeling her, the psychic energy of, uh-oh, the bitch is coming. And it's like a steel rod kind of go, because he's really tall, and he kind of hunches, and he's straight up, and she kind of walks in, and she is wearing something out of the 19th, a black dress, like a morning dress, and she has this really beautiful white blouse that comes up to her neck, and it kind of holds, and she looks like a queen. And she has the hair my mother does, really long, beautiful, that's all kind of styled on top of her head, but beautiful, like she's wearing a crown. My mom had the same thing. My mom looked just like my auntie, but more German, because her mother was German. She had more of the dramatic, but she was as tall as auntie and as regal, and had that whole queen thing going on. And auntie was a triple Capricorn like my mom, so they owned the universe. And my auntie loved my mother more than anyone of her, of all these kids. But because my mother looked the most, she didn't look Irish like all the rest of them. She looked Germanic. She kind of had that square head, blue eyes, hair, good figure. My mom, to the day she died, she had a pretty good figure. And so did Auntie. But she was Irish, not German. So she loved my mother, you know, but there was this little. Uh. So she loved my mom, and she got her out of St. John's, got her into New York City. But that's a whole nother story. But I look just like her brother, but I don't have the full dramatic thing. When I was a little kid, when I was a little peanut, I really looked like her, you know. And my uncle John and my uncle Leo both said, you look like your great aunt and her brother. So when she saw me, she was like, instead of starting screaming at Uncle Bob because he wasn't doing it right, and she would pick on him, right? And that's why his back was full of straight. And anyway, she walked in and just her jaw, and she called Peter. It was like she saw a ghost. Pete, that's her. And she said it with this kind of affection, love, like, and I go, no, my name's Al. And she goes, Peter, no, Al, Peter, Al. And she goes, you're Wilma's son? I said, yep, the little one. And she goes, we're going to go have lunch. And she goes, I'll bring him back. And so we go have lunch and go to the nicest restaurant there. And, she's got her special table. She owns the restaurant, owns the people. Everyone treat her like she's, the queen, and which she was. And she just asked me everything about me. What are you doing? Da, 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 da. And she goes, you like electricity? You like engineering? Just like your grandfather. Yes, you're just like your grandfather. You have the same eyes, just like your grandfather. And she just kept calling me Peter and saying it was just like, your grandfather. And anyway, I gave up saying, Al, and she just kept calling me Peter. I said, well, she's going to call me Peter, so that's good. And she's nice. I like her. Everyone says that she's, a witch, a snake, a bitch. She's actually quite nice. I like her. And she said, you have to come to my house. So come to her house, and it is like, the people who hoard. This is hoarding to the 10th power, but it's all not like piles of newspaper, piles and stuff that's great and amazing. And she has, because her father was an engineer, right? And it kind of passed down to, and he owned a company that became Ingersoll Rand. And that's the company that my grandfather worked at. But my grandfather wasn't a businessman. He just loved inventing and tinkering. And so that was his job. So he wasn't like uber rich guy. Lived in a nice house, had a nice life, till he died. When he died, my aunt basically put all, you know, my German grandmother and all those kids into like the poorhouse. Not really, but took them out of the big nice house they were in and put them into this little cracker box and treated them badly. Except my mom and there's two other of my uncles that she liked, and so because they were like their father, they looked like their father, and like she said, you look just like your grandfather. Anyway, but she kept calling me Peter. uh, so in her this amazing house of stuff, I just it was like a wonderland, right? And so basically, what she had, my uncle Leo would come and get me, and he would drive, or my uncle Bob, or whoever, because all the people who lived in those two cities, that were my mom's brothers and sisters, worked for her in some manner or for worked for some company, but she owned it, or did some, you know. So, but for that, oh, 3 weeks that we were there, I never really hung out with my parents. I hung with her or Leo because she liked Leo, even though he was brown and was an Indian and all of that. She said, "Your Uncle Leo, he's the smartest man I know." I knew there were a lot of people in these towns, and that's why I made him sheriff. He understands me. He understands how things need to be run, and she actually said this. He protects everyone in these counties from me. She's actually, I mean, that's what I loved about my auntie. She was so razor blade honest about everything. It was really pretty refreshing. But she was a snake. She was, she'd eat people alive because she didn't care. Deerskin. No, well, I guess he did. He had leather boots that he made himself. I think were deerskin. I mean, he the soles he cut. First time I ever saw anybody do this, the rubber soles of his shoes were from tires. So he made his boots himself, and he cut out the pattern. I mean, later women in my life, like the second wife had she was a fashion designer, and she had a big factory that cut out patterns and stuff like that. And I had another girlfriend, Paula Sweet, who again was a big fashion designer. She's actually pretty famous, Paula Sweet, in clothes anyway. Uh, well, buddy, don't. I was in New Zealand in 77, 78, and it was a great place. It was kind of like upstate New York. I mean, it had its cities, it had its stuff, but it was in proportion and in balance. And then when I saw what New Zealand's capital became, like in the late '90s and O's, it's like, my God. And because it lost on the thing about the Maori people that I loved was that they knew who they were. They were in such balance, and they kept that country of New Zealand in balance until the '90s and O's, and they became just another oppressed indigenous people and other. Meaning, I wasn't there. I just observed it from far away, and I really New Zealand was one of those places because I was with somebody, and they didn't really want to stay there as long as I wanted to stay there. They wanted to get back to Australia because they had things going on there, and so just kind of visited it. But I was really intrigued and really loved New Zealand, and wish I'd spent more time there. But now I have no money. I don't have any traveling papers. And the only way I'm going to be traveling the world again, other than this platform, digital platform, is if we put together the band and get the circus on the road. And if we do that, that will become infamous to the point where we will be asked everywhere to go. and when we go, we will be taken care of and generously, right? So that is one of the things that she well, yes, Paula Sweet made jackets, and what made Paula really famous was so she was an artist, right? And she would sew things, and she actually was dating my good friend oh, Ralston Farina, who was the person who invented uh, performance art, right? He was a painter, and he did these. I did these kind of performance art things. I didn't call it that. I was calling them shamanic ceremonies. But he would come to everyone I did, and he goes, "Well, this is great. This is art, Al." I said, "Well, duh. That's what shamanic ceremonies are." And so he got really into it, but not the way I did it, but the way he did it. And he called it performance art, and he was brilliant. He was just off the hook. But he was another one of these guys who was he was so brilliant that he couldn't stand other human beings, right? And Paula was another. She was beautiful, really beautiful, and brilliant. And her art, she made costumes and clothes. And she was getting into the performance art thing as like, wearing her clothes, right? And making her clothes. Anyway, so she would make these clothes, and this one company said, we really like this. We would love to. I think it was Neiman Marcus. We would love to. Are you a fashion designer? And I'm standing next to her. I'm at this show, and I go, yeah, she's a fashion designer. He said, does she have a factory? Can you produce? And I said, oh yeah, sure. And she's like, she's never done anything like this. She makes one at a time, one of the things, right? So, and this is in the '80s when we're getting open to China, right? And I was working for a buddy of mine, and I was working in X-ray machines. CAT scans were just coming online, and so were HMOs, right? Before, basically, medicine in America really worked, and HMOs put the money in medicine, and they turned it into a cash cow, and that's why we had. Oh, I helped put together. I had a buddy of mine who could sell anything. And he was just getting into the internet, right? And communicating to people around the world. I mean, he was a commodities guy. And they were one of the first people to sell things online. Anyway, so I worked for him because I was working for, my electric biz. And I got a gig through Mike to wire hospitals. Hospitals are pretty, you got to do it right. Can't fuck up because people can die. And they're very dangerous. They got all kinds of chemicals and gases, and, a spark can cause an explosion, like in an operating room with oxygen and all this other stuff around, You can have a real problem. So, I'm working in hospitals, and this HMO buys it, and they're ripping out the x-ray equipment and this CAT scan machine. And a friend of mine, this guy who sells stuff, he comes and visits me. He take me out to lunch, right? Because he wants to run some ideas by me. And he, kind of is in there, and we're talking. And this guy goes, "Well, you got to get it out of here, in the next 2 days, or we're going to throw it in a dumpster." And my friend goes, "You're going to throw this stuff away? How old is it?" "Oh, it's 2 years." "But it's not state of the art. We want state of the art." And he goes, "If we take it out, can we have it?" "Sure, just get it out of here in 2 days." So he looks at me and goes, "I'm going to go get some other guys," and because all this stuff was heavy. X-ray machines in those days had big transformers that weighed tons. So he went off and came back with a whole bunch of, Hispanic guys and forklifts and trucks. And we just picked, he said, "Okay, I want you to take this apart so it can be put back together." And I said, "Okay." So, which is kind of hard because they have control cables like this big with a zillion wires. You just can't cut them. You got to mark every wire. So I'm doing that, and I'm showing the Mexican guys how to how to do this and how to do that. And then, about 6 hours, and he goes, we're just going to do this. And, we got 2 days. We're not going to sleep. So he brings a little motivation. And he brings a guy who's an x-ray guy, right? Who worked, I met him before. He had worked for GE. So he and I sit down, we make a strategy, and we actually get all this stuff out. And my friend is going off and rented a warehouse. So he starts calling up every hospital, every new HMO about, hey, you're going to take any equipment? We'll take it out. I just want it free. So we took all this equipment back to this warehouse, and basically we recycled everything. And my buddy, who could sell anything on the internet, sold this stuff to China and to Africa, and could sell, so he would, sell this stuff to, a big hospital in China or Africa, and it's a $3 million, piece of equipment, and he'd sell it for 200,000, right? And he'd sell it for $500,000 installed and working. And so I was the guy who would take this stuff out and bring it to the warehouse, and he was shipping me all over the place to get this stuff. Anyway, in that period is when I basically, my friend Ralston got sick and died. And his girlfriend, Paula Sweet, was crushed. And, he and I had this big walk. They were like living with me. And she had her, and, basically I comforted her to the point where we were boyfriend and girlfriend. So she's, living in my loft, and I got all this X-ray stuff everywhere, and I'm doing all this stuff, and so she's meeting all these guys I'm working with, my two friends, who we started this business with, and Paula Sweet, yes, best known for creating, exactly, Muslim mink, and what Muslim mink is, I'll tell you the story about. I'm getting to the point of Muslim mink. So I had this other friend. Who was just like her. There were these two girls who would go off and get stuff because, Soho was all these factories, and I had a buddy who used to make paper, and he would get these bundles of clothes that were the size of a Volkswagen. And in New York State, if you bought clothes, they had to be sanitized so you could wear them. I mean, even if you were going to chop them up and turn it into paper, you had to have it clean. So anyway, we're living in this gigantic loft. My friend is making paper over here. I got all this X-ray equipment over here. Paula and this other friend of mine, she and her boyfriend are, and Paula brings her, can they stay here? Yes. And so they make clothes from these other clothes. They cut it up and make it into something else. She and Paula are doing this. And they start selling this stuff, and Soho is starting to be, lots of people are visiting. This is the, mid 70s, 74, 75, 76. And so anyway, they start doing that, and then they buy a little storefront on Canal Street. And they start selling their clothes to the tourists who are halfway coming from Chinatown and going up to Soho. And they're doing pretty good. They're like, getting these clothes from my buddy who chops them up into paper, and they're starting to get their own bundles and taking them apart and sewing them together, and they get industrial sewing machines, because I'm still fixing factories that sew things. So you're going to throw that sewing machine out? That real industrial sewing machine. Anyway, so these girls are knocking shit out along with that other girlfriend's boyfriend. And so they, do pretty good. And Paula is doing it, but she's still making, these guys want to make money. So they're like really knocking it out. Paula was like still making this stuff like art. So anyway, this is all going on, and there's a transition period between we all getting to know each other really well, and between I met Donna in 77, and Donna and I were together between 77 and the early 80s. And after that, when I got divorced from Donna, that's when, I met Paula again, and she's dating my buddy. I met her because she's hanging with Ralston. And so, I've known her. Ralston's my good buddy. We're like the Three Musketeers. And there's this Aquarian thing about me. I love being in a group of people. And I'm not really, unless I'm really sexually drawn to someone, sex isn't a big deal to me. And so both Ralston and her loved the fact I was like their best buddy, but I wasn't the third wheel. I mean, they were like, that's the only thing those two really had in common was their sexual drive towards each other. And that they kind of had fun with each other, and that I made it more fun. So anyway, Ralston dies. She becomes my girlfriend. I'm still my buddy, who's now a zillionaire from the X-ray business, is still my buddy, and he's a great guy because I was instrumental in that. And anytime I needed cash, it's not like I had to borrow it from him or that he held it over me. He just appreciated the fact that, yes, I got a little tidbit from that business, but not like what. But and he made it. I mean, he really was, it. And when he got rid of, when I left and did something else, he got real professionals to do the job I did. I just eased him into, meaning said, yeah, we can do this. Yeah, we can do this. Yeah, let's do this. I was the guy who said, yeah, we can do this. Whereas the X-ray guy, I don't know. I said, no, we can do this. And I got them into that place where they could do that. And then I went on my way, right? And so anyway, Paula Sweet and I are boyfriend and girlfriend. And so she's still making this stuff as art, and she's getting pretty well known as this stuff is art. And then, she's having a show, and she's showing off this clothes. And the guy goes, who comes to the opening, and goes, can you mass produce this stuff? And she's about to say, no, I'm just an artist. And I'm going, yeah. And my friend who can sell anything, oh yeah, she can, we'll have so many orders, da 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 da. And so he's got the contract signed, and and he's doing stuff in China. So he's like got that connect. So anyway, Paula kind of, she designs it, and she's all stressed out because she's never done any of this before, and da 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 da. And this guy is really carrying a ball for her, right, to build her business. Anyway, so she sends all the patterns and everything off. And, it's like a Neiman Marcus order of like 100,000 pieces. And when they first come back and they first send, the first small load, and they're already finished with 100,000 pieces, and they're on their way back on, the boat. And we get 10 of each of the different things that she designed and made. And the Chinese had sewn this stuff inside out and did the seams in such a way that they were like hairy. So it looked like mink, but it was made out of denim. Anyway, so all of the 8 million were not shipped to her, and they were shipped straight to Neiman Marcus. Neiman Marcus puts them on the rack, and Paul is like crying, "Oh, I'm ruined! Oh, this is terrible!" And they call up and say, "We need another million. It's an amazing success." And she goes, "What?" "Oh, people love it. It's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah, we need another million." And that's the end. That's they said no. She didn't ever look back, And what happened was, so she got so into that, and I was doing all this other stuff, that we kind of never stopped being sweet on each other. But she had more money than God. She went and got a real Soho loft and bought a factory, to design her stuff in Midtown in the garment district. And in that process, she met a guy who looked just like Ralston. Same shape. Ralston was kind of a shortish kind of guy, Jewish boy, and really wiry. Me, I was totally laid back, And Paula needed like the live wire. Now, I was live wire when we were like together, but that wasn't all the time. I was always, I was doing a zillion different things, and she was not that big into physics or astrophysics or esoterics, and I was part of all these different groups, and I was part of the UN thing trying to push alternative technology, and I was doing this and writing that and being in theater, and it kind of she kind of liked to go and but it didn't float her boat. She was 199% her business. And once it took off, she never looked back, and it was all about her business. It was all about her. And then she met this guy, and he was all about making her business because he was came from a fashion family. He had worked in the fashion industry, so he knew all the things that she didn't know, and they made a great team. And it was quite interesting because she got this another design factory, and she goes, "Can you, I'd love to have you, you know, do it for be the contractor, wire it, do all that stuff." I said, "Sure, great, no problem." But we're still, meaning I'm doing all this stuff. She's got her own loft. She's got all the, yeah, we get together every now and then, maybe once a week, if that, maybe every 2 weeks, and have a nice meal, go out, dance. She loved dancing, so she's still, I'm a dancing fool. And, we get a little buzz, and, and, we, things would just follow the normal pattern. So anyway, she gets me to do this, and she gives me this check that's like 5 times. I said there'll be 3 payments. One for for the starting. That's how I did. One to start the job, one in the middle, and the one when I'm all done, and you get the papers, right? So we had to work it all out. I'm big when I had my electric business. Really, I learned very early that you write everything down. You make everything specific. There are no questions. Everything is just exactly this is what it's going to cost. This is what you're going to get. I'm very good at that, right? So there's no. I don't want to have it. Oh, I didn't know. No, sorry. Oh, you didn't say. No, I did. So I'm really good at that. That's one part of the business world I'm very good at. And then I hire people to do the other parts. So she gives me a check, and it's like 5 times the total thing. I said, Paula, she goes, just keep the check. You need the money. I said, okay. And when people do that, it's not like, oh, no, I can't take this. No, I go, sure, okay, put it in the bank, right? So I did even, she knew that, gave me that check. I did a really good job. And then she brings in this guy. She goes, this is going to be my new production manager. And so he's going to be working with you on this project because he will know things that I didn't know written down, and we got a blueprint and all of that kind of stuff. As you go along, I want him here because he'll make these subtle changes that'll make this better. And I said, hey, that's great. I love that. I love, so he and I got to be actually pretty good buddies. And, I got my spidey sense. So, when she would come in and they'd be together, I could just say, okay. And I said, so where are you from? He goes, oh, I'm from San Francisco, and I've been in that, part of the fashion industry out there. I said, oh, yeah, okay. And so he actually kind of had a real connection with the Chinese arm of it. So he was going to be very important to her manufacturing, right? He spoke Chinese and the whole thing. So, but I'm seeing, how they like look at each other, and they want to hold each other, they bump each other, and I'm going. So after about the third time that she showed up, and she kept showing up more and more, and I said, listen, you don't have to fool around. I know you guys are, it's a thing. I can just, I smell it, I taste it, I know, I'm happy, I love it, And this guy looks. She goes, don't say it. I said, okay, I won't say it. He goes, I look like who? I said, I'm not going to say. She can tell you. So that's my story about Paula Sweet. And we've stayed buddies ever since. And the years have passed. And, when I left New York City in '88, all my New York friends, I just don't see them. I didn't go back to New York City until 2011. From 1988 to 2011, I did not step a foot in New York City. And that was my town. And it still is. I can still go in there and go to lots of places. Ow, ow. And that's what happened in 2000. I went there because a goddaughter of mine was going to get married. She said, you better be here or else. So I said, okay. that time I go visit. And I spent 2 weeks there and stayed with all my friends, and they all had like the owl nest memorial guest room, and so I had a very nice time in 2011. I've been back a few more times to visit because after 2011 I realized, well, I should visit these people a bit more. But then I got really sick and got really poor, and I haven't been able to go back. But they're all clamoring, I have friends who have openings in book opening, things like, you got to come to that. This story is about you. Unless you're going to send me a limo, probably not going to make it. So, again, we put together the band. We can go to New York. We can play at Carnegie Hall. We can do a lot of things. I can't do this stuff by myself, right? It's time that a younger crew, or not as feeble as this, I know most of you, or a lot of you, are my age, or almost, getting close, and you're in better shape than I am. Meaning, you didn't jump into the chocolate swimming pool of moose, and so, you stuck to your aesthetic guns. So here it is, 2 hours and 30 minutes and 59 seconds. So we've kind of really swam across a lot of things. So before I say goodnight, I'm going to kind of, because you guys have been chatting up a storm here, let's go back to do. You really did, boy. Territory, Osaki. Yep, all the Jane. Iroquois territory, Musakoa, Allegheny. Yep. His sister. Belle was blue. Yeah, and I named my sweet girl dog after her. Yep. John Wayne. Yep. Yeah, see, you guys have a lot of literary stuff there that we need to start having the reading circle. And I hope you guys go on my, video history on my Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei L. Bob, and go look at '09's beautiful video he sent me today about the Russian woman, and go see. And then I have 2 or 3 other videos that I went and found of the girl reading the first book, Anastasia, and other people talking about the story. The guy who was instrumental in getting it translated into English in a real way. Shaman chief of the Allegheny Nation. Yep. Did not know that. Yep. Oh, I love you guys. Sound of the Nation, like Powwow, Sweat Lodge, yes. And I had a thing called, and I want to do it again, it's called the Hedgerow Longhouse, because the Celtic and the Iroquois Nation are like, they go together like ebony and ivory, like butter and bread, and because the longhouse is where everyone is free to speak, and the hedgerow is the place where all knowledge comes and flows freely, and you're protected. The Druids would be on one side of the hedgerow. The Romans were looking for them to knock them out, and they'd be on the other side of the hedgerows. The Romans couldn't just like jump over it or go through it. They'd get all cut up, so they'd have to ride 10 miles to where there was an opening, and then come back the other 10, and the Druids would be gone. That's why they're still around. They use DMT, yes. But, the DMT they use is the DMT in our heads, gang. When we go into state, we are taking from our hypothalamus the little hormones that make the DMT in our cell structure. And tobacco. The tobacco ceremony is like, like my Uncle Leo. Here's a good one. My Uncle Leo, the Mohawk, will look like the nickel. He would smoke almost a carton of cigarettes a day. And he died at 85 in his sleep. He never had a smoking cough because he would take each cigarette and hold it up and say a blessing in Mohawk. And then when he lighted up, he wouldn't, he would just kind of roll it around in his mouth and let the smoke, and he would pray. The smoke would take his prayers to the great maker. And every time he prayed on a cigarette, it was a healing ceremony rather than an addiction. So that's what tobacco is. And in the sweat lodge, so we're coming together at the Great Green. We're going to make a sweat lodge. We'll do it ceremonially, and we take tobacco and we make tobacco ties and tie it to the roof of the sweat lodge, and they will be all our prayers. And when we sweat, we will have a ceremony where we will have insights, and that's what we do when we go into, I'm doing that shamanically, like the tobacco ceremony. So the next time we do go into meditation, I'm going to add the tobacco ceremony to it. Yep. The Vision Quest. Yes, I. Yep. Not sure why my mom never told me. Moms, our parents are human beings. I realized my grandma told me that about my parents. I said, don't be so tough on your parents, you know. And I never was, but she was like giving me a heads up so I wouldn't. She goes, as you grow up, just remember they're humans. They make mistakes. Whereas my brothers and sisters all thought they were superheroes, and so when their human side came out, they were let down and disappointed, and they hated my parents for it. And so, programmed so much not said, shared, bless. Yep, parents. Yep, exactement. Describe her appearance when you first saw her. So, my auntie, when I first saw her, like I said, black dress, this beautiful white blouse that showed the swell of her bosoms, even though she was all buttoned up, and her hair was impeccable, and she had these like daggers holding her hair up. If she took them out and used them on you, you'd be friggin' dead. Because I saw her throw one. She goes, watch this. She took the thing out and threw it across the room and bang, stuck right into the wall. I was like, okay, Auntie, not going to mess with you. And Auntie did have that bit of hag in her. But see, the old crone didn't have the hag. She only dressed up like a hag. She never had the hag in her. I'm off the mic. Okay. You got to keep reminding me of that one. I kind of misplaced my little headset. Volume went down. Okay. But that's the ringtone, not the volume. Anyway. Again, see, I need a crew for this technical side of this stuff. Rewind a couple of minutes. I must have dropped out. You're underwater. Till at least finish the story. How much I listened to the chat. It's like chainsaw in my ears. I'm sorry, guys. And for 10. See, I don't read this. My childhood boring as safe. Snake medicine. Yeah, the aristocratic went. Yep. Cringy things. Did see a match of the island. Dark screen. Yep. Well, he did. When we went to, I went to my first powwow with Leo, and yes, man, he had the suit. And that's what powwows are. I mean, Indians were the first people who really knew how to sew. The haves and have-nots. Paula Sweet, perhaps the best known. The Muslim mink, yep, which can be found. Permanent collection, Metropolitan Museum of Art. I know. Masterful, perfect soul. Jamie, I feel that he is co-creator. Yep. Ralston, I remember that name. Ralston Farina was named after that was his stage name. His other name was a nice Jewish boy name. You're 5 years old in 75. I was, how old was I? Let's see, 50, 60. I was 25. That's how old I was. Yep. Powerful co-creation love always wins and feels much better. Yep. We didn't get in on the deal. You know why I've never gotten on the deal was that I was always in at the beginning, guard it rolling, and then I had something else to go do. I would work real hard on a project for 6 months, get a big chunk of change, and then go live someplace really nice for 6 months to 2 years, and then come back. And I always came back to New York. That was my little, you know, energy wheel, right? Till my second wife died, and then I pretty much had to leave New York because it was too sad to stay there, because that was our town. So I've always been taken care of. Like my grandma gave me this, rule book of 28 rules, and one of them was to live like a millionaire, but not be one. So I've never had to be like right now. I'm living on $300 a month, but I'm still living like a millionaire. You know, I just am, I'm in the on ramp, meaning I was saved from the jaws of death from, and those 10 years when I worked for the Desperate Warriors, I made a lot of money. But what did it do? Nearly, I gained 270 pounds and I died, and it, destroyed my body. And now I have to live with a destroyed body, but that's okay because, you know, that keeps me in line. It makes me meditate 10 times a day. It makes me go on this path with you guys, to try and spunk things up, because it really, dying this time, and like I've got five really good doctors. That's why I'm in Roanoke, because I really can't get the kind of medical health. I go to the deep green, there is no medical health. I go other place, not so much. Now, my five doctors all say, well, people who will take care of you wherever you go. Not quite the same. They know me really well. They got all my records, so I kind of keep coming back here. But I'm getting better and better. The last time I really had to go see my doctors was about 90 days ago. I mean, I didn't even have to go see them. I had another 90 days. Normally I was doing it every 40 days, and then I went 90 days. And so I called them all up and said, oh, where you been? We thought you were dead. No, still here. You would have heard, I would have come visited you if I died. But I was doing something else. So here I am. So they all checked me out and they said, wow, you're doing pretty good. So I didn't need my eyes, operated on again, But the problem is, not the problem, the fact is 10 years of that kind of physical abuse that I did, um, the weight I gained, the diet I had, the kind of energetics I put myself in the middle of. The only things that kept me alive were my dogs, who were with me all the time, 24/7. They slept at my bed. Everywhere I went, they went with me. And they were my cadre. They were my cadre. We walked into these corporate things, I looking like a homeless guy, they looking like they were on either, they were gangsters. They were like, they looked like they were listening to Moby in earbuds. And they were psychically protected me. And that's why I'm still alive. Okay, buddy. Jamie, playlist. Don't come up on your channel. You go my video. You go to my thing and you look at my you go to my channel, Dreamy Dreamland, and it goes to history. You can't look that up, and it shows all the things I've looked at. That's my history. Then there's one that says videos. That says all my videos, and then the others. And that's why I need. I have no idea what I'm doing. I need a technical. I need an IT crew. I mean, most people I talk who do this, they have their laptop, they have this, they got 7 screens. They, looking at, when I go look at other people doing it, they're not just doing everything off their phone. But that's fine. We're just in the beginning. I just started this May 1st, so this I'm not worried about it. Huh. Well, that's too bad. Again, I need somebody to show me how to put it in a place where people can see it. So go read the Anastasia books. You know, that'll be much better because then you're reading the book instead of watching the video I put up on my channel where the lady reads it out loud. I bet you that her books are on on CD-ROMs. Anyway, I love you guys. It's 2 hours and 46 minutes and 23 seconds. No history, just vids. Okay. John can, I don't want John to touch anything. I really don't. Because he's a great guy. He's got a good heart. But he could, if I gave him the keys in there, and he kind of makes, gives me on the down, oh, I'll help you with anything. But he won't tell me anything. He won't show me how to do anything. That's really all he has to do. He won't show me. I'll do it for you, but it'll be my thing, and I'll be able to control it and own it, and because I just that whole thing of I live by experience. I trust everyone. I am an innocent, lucky bastard, but I've learned to okay, this is what happens. Thrown out 26 different times under the bus. So. You're the cadre. Yeah, I trust you guys way more. Like I said, he could show me. He doesn't. He's never said, well, let's go up and let me sit in front of you show me how to do this. So, that's, I love the guy. He's my friend. That's why I'm always sticking up for him, taking care of him. But I know how to protect myself. Was at an ashram for 6 months, and most of that time I learned martial arts. I learned jujitsu and kung fu and tai chi and qigong and all of those things. The first thing in martial arts, it's all about protection, not about fighting. It's not about attacking, and it's about to protect. To sense what's right or wrong before it ever shows up. Right. So, anyway, I'm a patient guy. We're doing great. I'm not. I've been around computers a lot, and I had access to a lot of this. And one more little thing about why, well, you should have gotten paid up. I always, like I said, I always got a nice check up front. Then I went off to heaven and had a good vacation. Then come back and always had money to do whatever the heck I wanted to. I always lived like a millionaire. Didn't have